I just want to put it for the record. We too will let us one.
Mr. Speaker.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we have called us to govern this province. We ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of all our people. Almachtige God, ons bid dat u gedrende ons vergaderinge. Ons dien nodige wees sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou. En dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikilela Nkosi ilizwe lethu nabantu balo. Umisele Nkosi ukulunga kwiphondo lethu. Nkosi sikelela iAfrika. Gcina abantwana bayo. Khokhela Nkosi inkokheli zayo. Yinike uxolo Nkosi iAfrika. All this we beg in your most holy name. Amen. You may all be seated. Honorable members, the Premier of the Western Cape province, and of course, leaders of political parties. It's nice to be in the chamber with all the members. And of course, it's a full house. But I also need to appreciate the honorable members that are in the virtual platform. There's an echo that bothers me. I hope no member has an active microphone. In terms of the virtual settings, we know that members are able to connect using their devices virtually. This is a hybrid session that then puts an onus and of course a responsibility on the honorable members to observe the directives issued by myself in 2020, which were agreed to by this House, that the virtual sessions are by nature designed to ensure that this House functions optimally, irrespective of the circumstances brought by the geopolitical environment. So it made us function optimally throughout COVID-19, and we continue to do so. The honorable members have seen the Minister of Cooperative Governance issued amendments to what the state of disaster looks like, and of course it was further declared to have ended as per the instruction by the head of state, the president. But this parliament, we have taken a decision, honorable members, the premier, that let us continue, honorable premier and the honorable members, to take advantage of the hybrid sessions so that we don't go back, but we move forward, taking full advantage of the tools of trade and the instruments of the dynamic world that we find ourselves and the change of work. So we will continue with our hybrid sessions as per the communication to all of you, honorable members. But we always encourage those honorable members who can be here that we try and bring back some normality. It helps us. It's always nice to look at the honorable members in person, just to touch that hand, to be able to know that you are here. It always works quite positively. It's comforting to see all of you back here. Now, In terms of our sitting here, if you are a guest, you are connected virtually, please do not activate your microphone. You are a guest, and that means you are sitting in the gallery, like those members who are guests here in the gallery, here in the chamber. So there's no difference for those who are in the online gallery. Members of the press, no temptation should let you activate your microphone and your camera. So let us be circumspect of the rules of the virtual sittings. Honorable members, we don't have a subject of debate. Today we've got a fairly straightforward sitting. I'm going to go straight to our sitting and recognize the Honorable the Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I move that in terms of Section 63B of the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers Act 1998, Act 20 of 1998, the upper limits of the salary and allowances of the Premier of the Western Cape as proclaimed by the President of the Republic of South Africa by Proclamation number 67 of 2022, published in the Government Gazette number 46545, dated 14 June 2022, be determined as the salary and allowances of the Premier of the Western Cape with effect from 1 April 2021. I so move.
Thank you, Madam the Chief Whip, and I would like to put to the House whether there are any objections to the motion being moved. No objections. Motion agreed to. Do you know, Honorable the Excellency, the Premier, why there's no objection? Because the honorable members have their increases paid to them already. And you signed that memorandum for that to happen. So it makes it easy. May I then move to the next one? I also, at this point, I recognize the Honorable the Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I move this motion as printed on the order paper in my name. Thanks, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion?
No objections from the Freedom Front.
No objections. Motion agreed to.
No objections from the ANC as well, Speaker.
Thank you, honorable members, and thanks to the ANC as well. Okay.
No objection. Thank you, Speaker. No objection from Al Jama. No objection. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brencase, and the support from the Al Jama. May I then, at this point, thank you, honorable members. No objections. Motion agreed to. The Chief Whip, I see. Okay. Mr. Pochenpoel, what are those movements? Thank you, honorable members. Honorable Chief Whip, is there any further business you want to bring to my attention in terms of the questions and the interpellations and so forth?
Thank you, Speaker. Just in regard to questions on the question paper, questions 1, 2, 3, and 4 is withdrawn as indicated on the oral paper, and then question 9 will stand over, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable members, as recorded, those questions have been withdrawn. We now move with our business, and the next item is the interpellations. The first interpellation by Honorable Kama to the Honorable the Minister of Police Oversight and Community Safety Honorable Minister Allen, I recognize the Honorable Minister. Before the Honorable Minister comes up, I just want to say to the Honorable members, as I congratulate the Minister, this is his maiden speech in this chamber. So please don't be nasty to the Honorable Minister. He deserves that pampering as per the tradition and and of course the convention. I hear the Honorable the Chief Whip of the Opposition says yes. Whatever he says, you just agree.
Honorable Maiden.
Honorable Minister Allen.
Honorable Speaker, thank you so much. I think for the record, it might be my second time within this new position, but I do appreciate your sentiment and congratulations. I do want to also thank Member Kama for submitting this particular interpellation, as this is a matter that the Western Cape government, together with the Standing Committee previously, have raised and discussed regarding our concerns. The South African Police Service have informed me that any form of drug laboratories or drug houses are identified by means of information received from SAPS informer networks linked to the illegal drug trade and ad hoc information obtained from the broader community. I want to latch on in that regard is that we have also, in terms of the initial investigation to the Western Cape Police Ombudsman's Office, received submissions via CPFs, via neighborhood watchers, who is acting as the brave men and women on our streets and walking and patrolling that is doing amazing work. But then also further, the South African Police Service have informed me on point B that depending on the nature and the source of the information received, it is operationalized through the execution of search warrants and Section 252A operations. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize the Honorable Member Kama.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And through your permission, I will have my video off due to network challenges. Speaker, in South Africa, in the Western Cape, we have a serious drug problem that destroys families and the future of our country and province. As we committed earlier in the year, when Honorable Plato sponsored a debate on the Western Cape drug problem, we must move with speed to implement an integrated approach that will involve various spheres of government. The National Drug Master Plan makes a correct diagnosis of our drug problem in the country when it states, and I quote, socio-economic factors such as poverty, inequality, and unemployment remain key contributing elements to the increased use of drugs and the development of substance use disorders, close quote. The Western Cape drug problem is not a SAPS-only responsibility, and I believe the provincial government and the MEC erred by asking the Western Cape Police Ombudsman to investigate SAPS failures to close down drug dens in the province. I will further expand on this on my next input. South Africa has become a consumer and producer of transit country for drugs. Tech is the most popular drug in the province, followed by heroin. We know based on evidence that these drugs are not manufactured here in the province. They are transported here from abroad and others are manufactured in Gauteng and other provinces. The Western Cape SAPS leadership has done a tremendous job in identifying and closing down clandestine labs in other provinces where illicit drugs destined for the Western Cape are manufactured. As this House, we must commend the SAPS effort in this regard. Additionally, we must ask the MEC to tell us what his department is doing to support these efforts by SAPS. There is enough evidence to back up this claim. A few years ago, a multidisciplinary operation led by the Western Cape Hawks, the South African Narcotics Enforcement Bureau, and Crime Intelligence closed down a multi-million illicit drug manufacturing lab in Soweto, where Menrex destined for the Western Cape markets was manufactured. SAPS is doing a sterling job in this regard and needs all support we can give. The last thing we should be doing is politicizing the drug problem. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Postman. Before then, Honorable Postman, is that a point of order, Honorable Murray?
No, it is not. Is it not interpellations now?
Yes.
After the member who tabled it?
All right. Let me help the father of the house. With the interpellations, we get a prepared list ahead of time. And then for the next one, after this will be the questions. Then that rule applies for that one. So you are correctly in order for the questions, but for this one, we'll proceed as per the list.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. I now recognize Honorable Bosman.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and good afternoon. Honorable Speaker, what we need to emphasize here is that the province, the Western Cape, our role is to provide oversight. And until such a time as the national government devolves policing responsibility to a government that can actually manage the police, that can actually fight crime, SAPS needs to be capacitated to better combat drug houses. Speaker, although policing is not a Western Cape function, we do sterling work in our municipalities, specifically in the city of Cape Town, to close down drug houses that operate within the municipal framework, within state rental stock housing. And I think it is ironic that a member of the ruling party is asking what SAPS is doing when they should be asking the national minister what they're doing. And they're asking how our provincial minister, who's been so ably supporting the work of SAPS in this province, they're asking what he's doing when Honorable Kama knows exactly that it is the new Minister of Police Oversight that has actually tasked the Western Cape Ombudsman with launching this investigation, because we know that there are more than 1,577 drug houses operating in the Western Cape, 53% of them situated in the metro. And what we really need to get to the crux of is what is the problems within SAPS to actually close down these known drug houses, what is being done to address the manufacturing and supply of illegal substances, as well as the use, the possession and the dealing of drugs, and also how does SAPS go about using the law and the resources at its disposal to actually close down these drug houses. Because what we know is that the Constitution places an obligation on the South African police services to protect and secure residents by preventing, combating, and investigating criminal activities. And the reality is that our police minister nationally does not understand how to do that. The police minister thinks that by acting such as a talking hat like he's on Harry Potter and coming to community in Bezos, that's going to solve crime. Crime is actually solved by using the resources at your disposal and having the political will to direct those resources. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I welcome the question, and I want to agree with the previous speakers. I agree that we have oversight over the police, and the ACDP agrees that we need to have police at the lowest level, province at the lowest level, and we agree that we must have operational control and just not oversight. But I want to remind everybody that the Premier has stated before, while the ANC is failing us dismally when it comes to policing with under-resourcing, the Western Cape government cannot stand with their hands folded, and that's why we have the safety plan. So my question to the minister is, what is he doing otherwise? We can rely on SAPS and we can wait forever. But I know we have the K9 units, stopping drugs coming in the Western Cape. What is his department doing more, to make sure that we clamp down on these drug dens? And I know that we have given quite a substantial amount of money for the LEAP officers to do and assist. And I think when we, take responsibility, the government takes responsibility to approach these problems, it will assist us. But if we wait on SAPS, we will wait forever, and our youngsters are going astray because, drugs are so freely available. So my question is to the minister, what is he and his department doing to assist that we get rid of this drug problem in the Western Cape? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable August.
Honorable Speaker, what we as the opposition parties and this House has come to know as the responsibility of the Department of Police Oversight and Community Safety is that it is easier to highlight the failures of national government and the dysfunctionality of SAPS than what it is to accept that the provincial government itself is failing the people, their safety and the safety of our communities. SAPS is gravely under-resourced. This is unfortunate reality. But I do not believe that the incapacities of the department from looking into creative ways, utilize community networks, and using digital technologies to identify drug laboratories, with the intention of assisting SAPS in closing them down. When it comes to crime and illegalities, there should be unified cooperation, not opportunistic finger-pointing. Speaker, community police forums are integral as grassroots informants for any illegal activities taking place in communities. It remains the responsibility of this government and the relevant department to serve as an intermediary, ensuring that the safety of whistleblowers and those seeking to exterminate criminal activities. What we have noticed in this continued politicization of the community safety structures and using these channels as schemes for cheap politicking. The mandate is clear. It is the prerogative of the SAPS to investigate crime, but remains the position of the neighborhood watches and CPFs under the competency of the provincial government to prevent crime. How is this department strengthening the resolve of these community safety structures are to be the eyes and ears for SAPS to create coordinated intervention? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Honorable August. I thought we were still going on. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And I think from the onset, I must state that I believe that MEC Allen is a good leader who knows that the drug scourge in our society is not a politicking matter, unlike what we have just experienced now from Member Bosman, who mostly even contradicted himself. I know through many conversations we have shared during our time as colleagues in the Standing Committee of Community Safety that it does not agree with the DA approach of using crime and the drug problem for cheap political scoring. I want to appeal to him to not allow his good name to be tainted by advancing nonsensical DA agendas like the ongoing investigation by the Western Cape Police Ombudsman on SAPS failures to close down drug dens in the province. Speaker, any strategy to combat substance abuse and illicit drug trade should have as a focus the complete eradication of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Who will investigate the provincial government failures in this regard? And that is not the responsibility of SAPS. Secondly, the drug dens that SAPS is being investigated for are council-owned houses, and so therefore, who is investigating the city for folding its arms when its properties are being used to commit crimes? Because part of the properties that Member Bosman is mentioning are part of the properties that are investigated, and some of them are owned by the city. Perhaps we should also ask how many times SAPS would have reported to the city that its properties are being used to commit drug crimes, and what has the city done about that? Moreover, the provincial government must tell us what progress has been made with regards to the development of the provincial drug master plan. What engagement have the MECs Allen and MEC Fernandez had in this regard? It is clear that the police ombudsman investigation is employed by the DA to politicize crime and the drug program. And the drug problem, I mean. My appeal is that we stop politicizing the drug problem. Let us work together with SAPS to strengthen the efforts to root out crime and the drug scourge. One proposal I would like to make today is for SAPS and the City of Cape Town to enter into an agreement where asset forfeiture unit would be used to take proceeds of crimes from these council-owned houses. Lastly, as we laud SAPS for the sterling work in closing down drug manufacturers, I believe we need to pay attention to the local supply of drugs, whereby SAPS at all stations should have strategies to deal with local drug supply. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kama Tumbasewunsusa ngoku. Honorable members, I now recognize the Minister.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I'm going to try to speak very slowly. I would want Member Kama to listen very, very carefully. I would have preferred to look him in his eyes so that he can fully understand. Member Kama, thank you so much again for this interpellation together with the inputs that have been received. Member Kama stated that SAPS is doing a sterling job in closing down drug houses. He said this twice. When SAPS themselves identify that they are not doing a sterling job. When we have 1,557 known drug houses in our province. I'm going to repeat again, 1,557 known drug houses. That is more known drug houses than actual public schools.
Honorable Allen, will you please take your seat, Minister? I would like to appeal to the Chief Whip of the Opposition. There is nothing wrong with the interjections in the House, but in terms of rule number 40, we need to do so in a way that does not disrupt the delivery of the message by the member who's currently addressing the House. So if you could please be circumspect of that and the honorable members in general. Please proceed, Honorable Minister.
Thank you so much, Member Speaker. When you are a lone ranger in the House, you need to amplify your voice in order to make up for the numbers.
Chair.
In order to make up. So let me repeat again. Member Kama mentioned that SAPS is doing a sterling job.
Honorable Minister, will you please take your seat? Thank you, Honorable Minister. I see the Honorable Deputy Chief Whip of the Opposition.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, my apologies. I had my hand up. I wanted to just raise a point of order. It's not to do with anyone on the floor. I think it's a technical thing because I'm hearing the Honorable Minister, I'm hearing you, I heard the Honorable Kama, but then I heard you saying about the interjection of the Chief Whip. I couldn't hear that. So I'm not sure whether whatever's happening in the House is coming to the members who are online or whether it's only the virtual and people are at their computers. I don't know if the technical team can just check that. Thank you.
I will explain that shortly, Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip of the Opposition. What happens is that if you interject from the House, the members who are connected in the virtual platform, they are unable to hear that interjection. But for the honorable members who are in the chamber, we can hear that. That's why I've made a decision when we're in the Bergrivier municipality during the responses to the Premier on SOPA. I've made an undertaking and a decision that we can continue with the interjections in a hybrid session, but you've got to be in the chamber or in the main venue. So in this case, you cannot hear the interjections, but you will hear the minister and you will hear anybody that activates the microphone. So that's the nature of the sittings. So that is why you did not hear what that interjection was about. I hope I've responded. May you proceed, Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. As I look into your eyes, Speaker, I want to repeat again. Member Kama mentioned that SAPS is doing a sterling job in closing down drug houses. SAPS itself highlight the fact that not enough is being done and that they are falling short in that regard. We have seen that based on parliamentary questions and information that we have 1,557 known drug houses in our province. That is more known drug houses than actual public schools. Some of these drug houses have been serving 3 generations, where there's a grandfather, a father, and a son that went to the almost used a word I wasn't supposed to use, that went to the same house in order to purchase drugs. Here in the province, we have a Western Cape Police Ombudsman, and that particular office have accepted our request in order to investigate why SAPS has been failing to close down these drug houses, but also the supply and the manufacturing of drugs in our province, because we've seen over a number of years that drugs being directly linked to organized crime. And if we want to cripple organized crime and take gangsterism out, we would have to make sure that we do everything in our power to close down drug houses, and SAPS is the leading agency in that regard. So what I want to say is that it will never be about politics. I've walked with Neighborhood Watch members that have showed me where those drug houses are. The communities know where those drug houses are. Some are in 100 meters away from schools. So I will invite Member Kama to come and join me so they can hear it's not about politics. It's about our young people that before they go into school, they go into a drug den in order to go and purchase drugs, because it's ultimately about that. And yes, I do appreciate Member August's input as well as Member Christian's, because it adds value. And Member Christians highlighted the K9 unit, and I was actually part of such an operation where in the Malmesbury area during this first 92 days, we actually confiscated illegal substances via the operations that we've conducted. And the department has been funding operations in districts, but also here in the city of Cape Town, and Member Christians highlighted the LEAP program. And on a monthly basis, I am wanting to scream and shout in terms of all the good work that LEAP is doing, the amount of firearms that they are taking off our streets, the amount of drugs that they are confiscating as well in terms of vehicle checkpoints. So there's amazing stuff happening, and we are doing so much. And Member Christians mentioned, what are we doing more? We are doing so much more than any other provincial government in terms of safety and of helping our citizens. But we are always, under the leadership of Premier, willing to do so much more. Hence, we want to take over the South African Police Service, and we want SAPS to be devolved to a capable government like the Western Cape. So we are more than welcome to do more, and we would want that money to flow so that the money can be used in order to fight crime and tackle crime effectively. Speaker, also, Members, August said it's easier to highlight failures. I would also then invite Member August to come and join me, because it's not to highlight the failures. Those are the realities on the ground. I will literally take Member August with me. He would be aware of some of these houses, and the outcry is clear that we need to shut down these drug houses because they are tormenting our communities, but it's also then linked to organized crime. But yes, SAPS, we are helping, we are supporting in order to strengthen the hand of the South African Police Service, because we know we can't have, it's never normal that there's more public, that there's more known drug houses than public schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister
Nothing.
Ale.
Nothing.
That concludes the interpellations, honorable members. We now move to questions. The first question will be number 5. As you are well aware that number 1 up to question number 4 have been withdrawn. Question number 5 is by the Honorable Said to the Minister of Education. I recognize the Honorable Minister Mania.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd just like to confirm that I'm audible.
Yes, you are crystal clear, Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member for the question, which of course traverses the whole issue of allegations in relation to financial mismanagement and other irregularities at the Norwood Central Primary School. My response is yes, we have been informed that there are allegations of financial mismanagement. A complaint was received on the 8th of February 2021 relating to financial mismanagement by the school. These allegations included alleged irregular payments to an employee, textbooks and stationery not being purchased, and that no financial committee had been established by the school. The matter was, of course, referred to the School Finance and Records Officer located at the district, who visited the school on the 28th of February 2021 to investigate. I'm advised that after a thorough investigation by the district and careful consideration of all the facts, it was found that there were no irregular payments to the employee. But certain financial procedures and processes were not being followed by the school, particularly with regard to learning and teaching support materials. The outcome did not warrant formal disciplinary action, but further action was required and was recommended in terms of the following. The LTSM committee must ensure that the management of LTSM at the school is in line, of course, with the framework for the management and retrieval of learning support material, an issue traversed in Circular 40 of 2018. A parent who is employed at the school may not represent the parents on the school governing body, as stipulated in Section 23(3) of the South African Schools Act. The parent, of course, must either resign as an employee of the school or as a governing body member. Minutes and attendance of registers of all relevant meetings must be kept for audit purposes, and the need to establish a financial committee at the school was communicated. This, of course, has since been established. However, the department has indicated to the school that the committee must meet more regularly. In addition, to further support and strengthen the school's LTSM practices and financial management, the SFRO provided training to the teaching staff on the effective management of LTSM as prescribed by the framework for the management and retrieval of textbooks, and financial management training to members of the SGB. The Metro North Education District Office is monitoring progress in implementing these regulations. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Minister Mania. I will now provide the person who posed the question, the Honourable Sayed, to give the first cherry of the bite of the cherry.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and my thanks to the Minister for the comprehensive response to this particular question. Given what the Minister has said, particularly around the financial irregularities, just to ensure that these type of things don't happen again, is the Minister willing to consider instituting a forensic investigation, an actual forensic investigation into the financial irregularities at the school? If not, why not? And if so, what are the relevant details? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Obviously, an investigation did take place. That investigation found that there were no irregular payments, as I said, and therefore no further disciplinary action in the department's view was warranted. And so my question is, my answer is, under the circumstances, no. There does not appear on the face of it to be any reason to institute a forensic investigation. But I will say that if the honourable member has information at his disposal which he believes warrants a forensic investigation, I would plead with him to please share that information with me so that that information can be evaluated, and if necessary, a further investigation could be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I don't see any further hands with regards to this question. Honourable Sayed, over to you.
Thank you very much, and my thanks to the Minister. Will most certainly make sure within the course of the next few days to submit further information that we have received on the matter to the Minister, just so that the Minister can consider those issues. I just wanted to also know if the Minister is aware as well of issues around nepotism, alleged nepotism, as well as issues of TVs and computers having been sold from the school premises by senior staff members. Those are allegations, but I want to know if the Minister is aware of that. If he's not aware of that, we'll share that information with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. No, I'm not aware of those allegations. Again, I would encourage the member to furnish me with full details of the allegations and all the information at his disposal, so that that information can, as I've said, be evaluated, and if necessary, a further or supplementary investigation can be conducted into the affairs of the Norwood Central Primary School. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Any further hands? I see none. Thank you. We will move on to the next question. I now recognise Honourable Minister Allen.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. I appreciate a particular question from Member Kama, but I would want to highlight that the question should be referred to the City of Cape Town or other relevant municipalities here in the province. But I do want to further echo that we are represented as a department and have representation on the Safer Cities work stream, and there are different stages of implementation. But because we have an election coming up in 2026 again for local government election, I will encourage Member Kama to consider either standing in the City of Cape Town or alternatively asking a dwindling amount of ANC councillors in the city to pose this particular question.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Kama, you have the first mic.
Deputy Speaker, I don't know. Before that, I want your attention, because
Honourable Kama, 1 minute. Honourable Lecker. Yes, over to you, Honourable Kama.
Yes, because the MEC says we must ask the city, but at the very same time he says the department is represented, and by that he's saying he's not answering the question. So I wanted to have your indulgence in that first before we continue, because he says the department is represented, but at the very same time he says we must ask the relevant people for this question. So that sounds like saying he won't answer the question.
Well, I can't answer that on his behalf. I'm going to ask the Minister to respond.
Thank you. We are making progress. There's listening taking place. Thank you so much. The City of Cape Town and municipalities are the lead in this regard. This particular question should be directed to the City of Cape Town or any relevant municipality that Member Kama wishes to obtain information regarding the Safer Cities model that is being implemented. What we are doing is that we are doing more. We are represented there. We are not the lead. We are doing more, and there is different stages of implementation by going beyond and above what we are doing as a department. But I would again state, if there's any matter with regard to the Safer Cities that is being rolled out, that Member Kama should direct that to the City of Cape Town, alternatively to any other municipality in the Western Cape.
Thank you, Minister. I recognise Honourable Sayed.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Just a question to the Honourable Minister. While I indicate that Honourable Kama resides in the Boland, in the Drakensberg, so if he wants to stand as a mayor, he could stand there. But because it's important that the Honourable Minister knows who serves in the committee and their profiles, you know. But just to ask him, is the Honourable Minister willing to take up the position of the candidacy for the Premier of the Western Cape in 2024? Thank you.
Honourable Minister, to you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker, and to Member Sayed. Thank you for confirming where Member Kama will stand, which then also alludes to the fact that you will be standing in the City of Cape Town in 2026. But on your question, no. We firmly believe that in the Western Cape government, under the leadership of Alan Winde, the Premier, we are on the right track. We are making progress, and we've seen again how we do so much more than any other provincial government in terms of tackling safety. So I'm fully committed behind the Premier, the Cabinet, and the leadership here under the leadership of Minister Tertius Simmers for our political party, the DA, which is doing amazing work. So we will continue to support our leaders and to work with them. But thank you so much, Member Sayed, for the question.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Bosman. Over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, a substantive question on the topic to the Minister. Minister, can you perhaps tell us whether there are any overlaps between the Safer City model and the Western Cape government's innovative safety plan that is doing so much to keep our communities safe?
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you so much for that particular question. That is what I would highlight as when there's a complement, when governments and spheres of government complement one another. For example, our constitution was written in the spirit of cooperation, where local government, provincial government, together with national government, fosters working relationships and work together. Member Bosman, sadly, that has been adopted by criminals. Gangsters have adopted the spirit in which our constitution have been written, where entities, governments must work together. And the Safer City models is complementing already the good work that we are doing in terms of the safety plan. Hence, I've always been very clear that as we are calling for SAPS to be devolved so that we are able to better manage the South African Police Service and strengthen the hand of SAPS members here in the Western Cape. But we also realize that we need to work with local government. We need to work with the municipalities. Hence, we have district safety plans. We give funding to various districts and municipalities in order to ensure that we tackle safety matters in that particular area. So the short answer will be it does complement the work that the innovative plan that has been implemented under the leadership of Alan Wendy here in the Western Cape.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize Honourable Kama.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I think, Deputy Speaker, this Safer Cities model is a national project that was launched in eThekwini 2020, and it was meant to be piloted in 10 cities, and the city of Cape Town is part of it. And now we have a 20 months delay in terms of its implementation. And I want the minister I want to get an understanding as to how do we then take the commitments that the Premier would have made and the commitment that he continues to make and has just made even now serious if he's not able to take this House into confidence in terms of what would have led to the delay, because that must concern him if he's a minister that is interested in an integrated approach of fighting crime. The safety plan is still a lip service. We're only paying for the lip officers. So what we want to understand is, how is the minister not concerned? And simply saying that, go pose the question into the right area, is the minister not concerned that this plan has delayed for such a long, and it is meant to be an integrated plan that includes many departments working together to ensure that we fight crime in the province? Or is it just an issue of calling for a provincial control as part of the DA manifesto? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Kama. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Even though I can appreciate a view or sentiment, Member Kama's question relates to circumstances that have led to a delay, which is a delay in the view of Member Kama. There is work streams, and those work streams are at different stages of implementation here in the Western Cape across the various municipalities. But again, I trust that Member Kama will take the advice that this particular matter will be taken up at local government level as well. But also, we have standing committees here in the Western Cape government, and I'm sure that Member Bosman will also be able to engage Member Kama in this regard.
Thank you very much, Minister. That concludes question 6.
But we know the city never comes here.
Order. We now recognize Honourable Minister Fernandes.
Good afternoon, Deputy Speaker. Am I audible?
You are, Minister.
In the interest of the bandwidth, may I switch off my camera, Deputy Speaker? Thank you.
You may.
I would like to take the opportunity to thank the Honourable Member Baku Vos for the question, and I will reply as follows. Like sexual harassment, gender-based violence compromises not only the health and safety, both inside and outside of the workplace, of a victim and his or her family, but also that of co-workers. Gender-based violence is a human rights violation, and as such, there is a regulatory framework that provides the employer with sufficient authority to address GBV within the Western Cape government. The absence of a GBV policy and/or an updated sexual harassment policy does not, in and of itself, limit the employer from addressing these matters. The Western Cape Provincial Government, through the Department of the Premier, has conducted a review of the sexual harassment policy of 2011 and is in the process of finalizing a policy that will encapsulate all forms of harassment with a focus on, amongst others, sexual harassment and bullying. Once approved, the 2022 draft harassment policy will replace the 2011 sexual harassment policy. In the interim, Honourable Deputy Speaker, reliance is placed on the current sexual harassment policy, the Code of Conduct as set out in the Public Service Act of 1994, together with the applicable laws. In addition, the Disciplinary Code and Procedures for the Public Service, Resolution 1 of 2003, as well as Chapter 7 of the SMS Handbook, provides the regulatory framework to take action against officials found to be in contravention thereof. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I now recognise Honourable Bakufos. Would you like to have a follow-up question?
Deputy Speaker, am I
You may-
audible?
You are audible. You may proceed, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I would like to pose a follow-up question to the Minister. My first question, MEC, the continued absence of a uniform GBV policy in the province has presented many challenges, including not having standard approach of handling GBV cases in provincial government, which has seen the lives of Farrell Payne remaining on his job while the victim is at home. I therefore wish to understand who is championing the development of GBV policy in the province government, and when will have such a policy developed. That's my first follow-up question. And the second follow-up question, around March this year, Deputy Speaker, we were told that the sexual harassment policy in the provincial government is being reviewed and updated. Can the minister tell us what progress has been made in this regard? When will the process be finalized? And the last follow-up question, Deputy Speaker, whether any discussion with regards to the need to have a uniform GBV policy in government and what is taken with regards to that. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Bakufos, I'm going to ask the Minister to respond to your first question, and then if you can repeat the second question, as you can only pose one question at a time. So, Minister, over to you.
Sorry about that, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Member Bakufos, for the follow-up. I did indicate in my response that once approved, the 2022 draft harassment policy will replace the 2011 sexual harassment policy. So it is a topic that is on the table and is being explored. I also wish to explain that within Western Cape Government, we have a transversal gender-based violence forum that meets regularly once a month. And within that forum, we are mainstreaming and ensuring that every department has a gender GBV toolkit so that we can get the necessary consistency across the whole of government. However, Honourable Bakufos, I'll go on to the second part of the question, if the Deputy Speaker will allow me, because there is a current code of practice on the prevention and elimination of harassment in the workplace, which replaces the previously issued Code of Good Practice on the handling of harassment in the workplace of 2005. So the code's objectives, and I think this might allude to some of your question, the code's objectives are as follows: to eliminate all forms of harassment in the workplace or any activity linked to and arising out of work, to provide guidelines to employers and employees on the prevention and elimination of all forms of harassment, provide guidelines on the appropriate procedures to be followed when dealing with harassment and prevention thereof, and to provide clear steps that employees must follow to eliminate harassment, assist employees to create and maintain harassment-free workplaces. So this current code is already in place and it has very clear objectives. I will go a bit further and say the code is applicable to the working environment as a guide to employers and employees, perpetrators and victims of harassment, which may include employers, employees, managers and supervisors, job seekers and applicants, persons participating in training programs, including interns and persons on learnerships, volunteers, clients and customers, suppliers and contractors, and others doing business with the state. So presently, when an allegation is reported, the employer must undertake the following measures: consult with all relevant parties, take the necessary steps to address the complaint in accordance with the code and employer's policy or any applicable collective agreement, and take the necessary steps to eliminate harassment. I trust that I have answered some of the questions in part. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. I don't see any further hands. Honourable Bakkerforce, you want to add to your question, or you have been answered?
I think I will pause there for now.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your answers.
Through
Thank
the
you,
chair,
members.
thank you, Member Bakkerforce.
Thank you, Minister. I don't see any further follow-up questions. If there are none, there are none. We will move over to the next question. We
No
move over.
further, Speaker.
Okay. We're moving over to question 8. Minister Fernandes, I recognize you again.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I would like to take the opportunity to thank the Honourable Member Botha for the question. And the question was in 2 parts. There was a question A and B. In terms of question A, we had 7 young people were awaiting trial from the West Coast region. And part B of the question, 31 young people were admitted to secure care centres from the West Coast region. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Over to you, Member Botha.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you for the Minister for the response. I'd like just to understand the 31 that was placed in secure care centres. Is it secure care centres on the West Coast or is it outside of the West Coast?
Minister.
Thank you for the question. We have secure, to the Honourable Member, we have secure care centres across the province. There is an assessment, a centralised assessment process. So children would not necessarily, or youth in conflict with the law would not necessarily be placed in a centre in a district. They would be placed in a centre where there is available bed space. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member Botha.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Can I ask to the Minister through you, Deputy Speaker, that if I could be furnished with a list of where this 31 youth of the West Coast has been placed in what secure care centres, and that can be done in writing.
Thank you. Minister, you want to respond?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I will ensure that my office provides the necessary feedback to the honourable member as requested. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I don't see any further hands. No. That concludes question 8. We move over to question 10. That's correct. Yes. 10, I now recognize Minister Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you very much to Honourable Klego for the question. For the period mentioned, only one such case was reported by a motorist alleging a case of assault and unlawful arrest by the provincial officers. Part 2 of the question, when such matters are brought to my attention, the relevant senior manager is tasked with conducting a thorough investigation based on the complaint received. Parties are then given an opportunity to present their version of the incident, and all other relevant evidence is scrutinized objectively. The findings concerning the complaint are conveyed to the complainant, and when an officer is found guilty of misconduct, appropriate disciplinary action follows after due process. In the aforementioned reported matter, Deputy Speaker, evidence, particularly video footage of the incident, proved that our officers had acted appropriately in the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I now ask Honourable Klego, would you like to do a follow-up question? Not here. Not here. Any further follow-ups regarding this question, question 10? No. Right. Thank you very much, Minister Mitchell. That was quick. We now move over to back to Honourable Minister Allen. Question 11, Minister.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. And I also want to thank the member for raising this particular question. The Western Cape Liquor Authority inspectors enforce compliance by licensed outlets. All non-compliance matters brought to the attention of the Western Cape Liquor Authority are investigated and placed before the Liquor Licensing Tribunal for determination and an appropriate sanction. These ranges from the imposition of fines, suspension of trade, and the suspension of licenses. This is entirely dependent on the nature of the offence, and fines can be in excess of 100,000 rand. Deputy Speaker, for the first quarter of the financial year, 5 cases related to underage drinking or access to restricted areas were initiated by the inspectorate in the following areas: 1 in Mossel Bay, 1 in Kraaifontein, 1 in Stellenbosch, and 2 in Ceres. Reports were prepared and referred for prosecution before the LLT. All these matters remain pending currently. But what I also want to add is that if there's any member of this House or any member of the community, if they are aware that any outlet is selling alcohol to any person that is underage, they should duly report such matters in order for it to be looked at and that we are able to take the appropriate action. Furthermore, the additional inspectorate capacity has enabled the Western Cape Liquor Authority to enhance its visibility throughout the province, which serves as a deterrent to license holders. On point number 2, closed down between 1 January 2022 and 21 July 2022 is that 28 were suspended and 2 licenses were revoked. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Is Honourable Makamba Botia here to ask a follow-up question? No, then I will move straight to Honourable Kama.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and let me thank the Minister for the responses that have been provided. I want to check, Chair, if the authority does have capacity to ensure that within a set period of time, if it's a year, to ensure that we do have inspections in almost all the licensed liquor or liquor outlets, to ensure that we to enforce this compliance that we are talking about, and what else is being done, you know, by the department other than to wait for people who say there's an outlet that is selling liquor to underage, but what is done to enforce it or to make sure that we on the part of the department were able to catch those who are selling liquor to underage in their outlets. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Yes, I wish to repeat again, if there's any person that is aware of a liquor outlet that is selling to underage, they must please report that immediately. That is the one end. It is never just that is the answer. We have also capacitated and added extra inspectors to the Western Cape Liquor Authority to ensure that we are able to inspect and visit as many of these outlets. I've been to a number of those oversight visits and joining in, and I will also definitely encourage the Standing Committee to also ensure that they visit the Western Cape Liquor Authority or plan engagements with them as well. So we are definitely Member Kama in terms of our approach to make sure that it is fully capacitated so that we are able to get to all those outlets, but make a meaningful difference because it does act like a deterrent, and it is a deterrent when we do know that liquor outlet owners are aware that inspections are soon or that it can be unannounced. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Bosman.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, through you, I'd like to know if the Minister could give the House an update on the amendments to the Western Cape Liquor Act.
Thank you. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Member Bosman. I do know that there is currently 2 phases and a task team as well, and that cabinet resolution was that a regulatory impact assessment must be conducted on the 2 proposed amendments, and the Department of the Premier and Legal Services are supporting the Department of Community Safety along with representation from Health, Agriculture and Economic Development and Tourism, as well as the Liquor Authority. We remain committed to make sure that that process is concluded as quickly as possible. But for each of those 2 amendments, the significant test documents have been drafted, which is currently being reviewed by the task team, and these documents will be finalized actually by tomorrow. So thank you so much that particular question has been raised, but that process is unfolding, and I'm looking forward to receiving that particular document in order to peruse it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Are there any follow-up questions? I don't see any. Right. Thank you, Minister. We will now proceed to question 12. I recognize the Honourable Minister Mania.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member for the question, which traverses the issue of sexual harassment at the Rocklands Secondary School. The reply to the question is that the teacher was still employed for the period indicated, but I have been advised that the teacher was not teaching at the school during the period, and more importantly, the victim was also not present at the school as her contract had ended the previous year on the 31st of December 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Christians, would you like to follow up?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, just a question to the Minister. You know, the victim went through a difficult time, and she says, you know, she's not so passionate about her job anymore, and she's scared to even get close to colleagues. I want to know, with the perpetrator being found guilty, and I know that the 15th of July, they would have looked at it, and the chairperson of the committee then would have, you know, brought out a sanction against the perpetrator. The question that I have is, I didn't know her contract ended, but what she said was that she went to go look for other jobs. She's there, but she's very uncomfortable. So was there any counseling towards the victim and the perpetrator? You know, they're looking at mitigating and aggregating circumstances pertaining to that. When will this come to finalization? Because I believe at the 15th of July, after listening to all the evidence, all the mitigating evidence and aggravating evidence, the presiding officer would have then come to a sanction. So when is that taking place? Because the case, he was found guilty at the end of June already. And I don't believe if he gave this victim such a tough time that he must ever teach, found guilty. So that is my worry, Minister. Teaching, although she's not there, she's finding it difficulty to teach and passionately because of what happened to her. He's found guilty and that he is still teaching. It's a major problem. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member. On the perpetrator, of course, the perpetrator, as you point out, was charged, and we are, as you correctly pointed out, awaiting the sanction, which we believe is imminent, but I can't confirm exactly when the sanction will be imposed. On the question of the victim, and I accept on your version, she was put through a terrible time. I cannot confirm whether she was provided with socio-psychological support, but I believe she would have been. But despite that, given the fact that the Honourable Member has brought her circumstances to my attention, I will, of course, alert the department, and I will ask the department to reach out to her to see whether she requires any further support.
Thank you, Minister. Any further follow-up questions?
Speaker, can I ask, Deputy Speaker, can I ask another follow-up?
You may proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, if I can just hear from you as soon as we get the results of the sanction, and also if the victim has received counseling, that you please send it to me in writing so that we can close this matter, because it's not the first time that I bring a matter of such a nature to you. And, you know, the more people come to a person, we address it, and, you know, that we as, you know, representing the people, at least take their concerns seriously. So I would appreciate it, Minister, if we can get both sides, if there was support to the victim and the final sanction on the perpetrator. Thank you.
Minister, your response?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'll undertake to keep the Honourable Member informed on both matters.
Thank you very much. Any further follow-up questions? Nope. Thank you. We will then conclude that and move on to the final question, question 13. I now recognise Minister Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you very much to the Honourable Member for the question. The department places a great deal of emphasis on vehicle fitness, as this is one of the major contributing factors to road crashes and fatalities on our roads. The usual procedure, Deputy Speaker, adopted when an officer finds an unroadworthy motor vehicle on our roads is to issue a notice in terms of Section 44 of the National Road Traffic Act of Act 93 of 1996. Deputy Speaker, this notice discontinues a vehicle, which means that the discontinued vehicle can be used on a public road only for a limited stipulated period, just to take the vehicle to the owner's or operator's home or to a garage for fixing. The officer, Deputy Speaker, and I want to emphasize this, does not remove the vehicle from the road, but before the vehicle can be used normally on a public road again, it has to be retested to ensure that it's roadworthy. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Minister, for the reply. Just a question. So the vehicle is then given a specific period of time that the owner of the vehicle gets the vehicle fit, roadworthy for. Is this must this owner then produce a certificate, a roadworthy certificate, so that does the department take note of cars that has not been roadworthy? And I believe that some of these cars still carry on and driving without roadworthy. Is there a period of time that is some checkup or something to make sure that they complied and that they don't drive with a vehicle that's not roadworthy? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister.
All right, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you for the follow-up question. I think it's important to note that the department has placed an enormous amount of resources and finances into utilizing technology and with the actual on the road integrated roadblocks that happens on a daily basis. So we normally pick up these compliance issues during those integrated roadblocks, but also because of the technology that the department has invested in over years, we are able to pick that up too. But I take the point about following up on notices. So I appreciate that comment. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Minister. Any further follow-up questions?
That's fine, Deputy Speaker. I've answered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. None. Thank you very much. That concludes the questions for oral reply. Any outstanding replies will be printed in Hansard. Honourable members, we now move over to, give me a second, if we can just. Honourable members, we will just, okay. Honourable members, just with your indulgence, just a minute, if we can just hang on for a minute. We are just doing some testing. Thank you. Honourable members, thank you very much for your indulgence. We will now move over to questions to the Premier without notice. I recognise the Honourable Moran.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker, and good afternoon to everyone. Deputy Speaker, in the Premier's 2020 State of the Province address, now 2.5 years ago, the Premier promised 3,000 law enforcement officers. Can the Premier tell us how many law enforcement officers are now enrolled in LEAP? Thanks.
Over to you, Premier.
Thank you very much to the Honourable Member for that question. And I think a really excellent question. Of course, when you get elected, you put your plan together through your manifesto, and we said 3,000 officers, because if you'll remember, we're sitting with 4,000 to 5,000 officers too few that are allocated through the police system if we are to get to parity in our province. At the moment, we're sitting at 1,200. And I think on the 14th, we'll see some more allocation of LEAP officers, but the number is right now 1,200. But the member will also know that obviously since the election, we've had a pandemic. And of course, we've had probably the biggest problem is a massive slowdown in tax collection and, the economy, driven mainly by ANC policy failure, ANC infighting, and ANC incompetence at a national level. So at the moment, that answer is 1,200.
Thank you very much, Premier. Over to you, Honourable Moran.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. So what the Premier is telling us when it comes to the province, the issue of COVID and the pandemic is blamed, but when it comes to national, it's because they are corrupt and the weakness. Deputy Speaker, can the Premier tell us of the total funding of LEAP, how much percentage-wise, more or less, is the provincial government contributing to the plan? Percentage-wise.
Did you hear that?
Deputy Speaker, what is the percentage?
Yeah.
I think that is also a very good question because, you know, we've always spoken about devolution of power and policing is a national competency and not a provincial competency. Our job is oversight. So, of course, we have to take of our budget. We don't really get allocated budget through the national budgeting process that says the province gets X amount for policing or safety and security, etc. and we take from our allocation primarily for education and primarily for health. Those are the two big budget items, and then followed by the third being social support and that social net. And only then do we get to the economy and do we get to infrastructure, etc. And so no province has that kind of allocation. But if you remember, we made a choice and we said we will put R1 billion aside to kick off the safety plan. Because, and the reason we had to make that decision is because we are not seeing success in fighting crime in our country. Not at all. I mean, I keep awake at night because of the 4,000 people that get murdered in this province every single year. And we don't see a plan from national government. We don't see a plan from the ANC policy position. We don't see leadership coming from the ANC in dealing with those 4,000 murders, let alone all the rest that goes with it, gender-based violence, the drug houses that we were talking about earlier, interpolations, etc. They're all supposed to be dealt with the criminal justice system and the South African police services. But we then took that decision, as tough as it is, to say we are going to take money from all of our departments and put it into safety because of failure at a national level. We really would like devolution, but in the meantime, because of that failure at a national level, we have to cobble together out of our budget. And of course, you know, I keep awake because of the 4,000 people murdered in our province. It seems as if the ANC just cruise along because we might have the highest murder per capita rate in the country. But way more than 4,000 people are murdered every single year in KZN. And way more than 4,000 people every year are murdered in Gauteng. But of course, they have bigger populations, and therefore the murder rate to population rate seems lower. But just think of those numbers. They are unbelievable. You know, I remember going to the swearing in 3 years ago as the honourable member kicked off these questions, to the swearing in of the president after the election. And at the guest house that I was at, there were foreign dignitaries that came to visit South Africa. And there was a guy there from Copenhagen. And he said to me, good to see that you've been elected and I'm here as a special guest. And he said, so what are you focusing on? And I said, the one thing that I've got to focus on is safety. We've got to put a safety plan together. We're going to have to focus on bringing down the murder rate. So he said, what's the murder rate? I said, over 4,000 people per year in our province. He could not believe it. He said, you know, if we have one murder every 3 years in Copenhagen, we go crazy. What is being done in other provinces who have more than 4,000 people murdered every single year? Nothing. But this province is taking money away, and that first initial 1 billion, which is now growing, taking money away from other areas because we know it is the thing that is affecting our citizens the most. I would love to be able to say the ANC are doing such a good job. Policing is being properly managed. We don't have to worry about it. Let them do their thing because we will focus on jobs. We will focus on the economy. We will focus on the other things that we need to focus on, education and health, social development, etc. But we can't do that because our citizens are hurting every single day. The gangs are running riot. The craziest thing out is now the unions, who are partners of the ANC, the unions are partners, want to march next week, I think it is, to the province to moan about crime in communities. The ANC's partners. The questions that we get here from the ANC saying that the safety plan doesn't work. The most ridiculous questions in the world. Because the safety plan is what Minister Allen can stand up here and say, there's only one part of South Africa where the murder rate is stabilizing or coming down, and that's where these 1,200 officers that this honourable member is asking about are deployed according to data, evidence, and making a difference in people's lives, saving lives. Only one part of the country. And you know who has to announce that? Minister Becky Clele in the National Assembly. Hy moet hartslik toe hy daai antwoorde gee. But it shows you And this is where I think our problem falls flat in South Africa. You know, in politics, you need to be able to debate. You need to be able to put different policy ideas on the table. That's actually how a democracy works, but not here. The ANC fail and fail and fail, and then they stand up here. They don't put alternatives on the table. They keep questioning on the things that are working. It's totally ridiculous. But anyway, at the end of the day, this government will carry on budgeting because it's in the best interests of our citizens. We will focus on safety. We will focus on jobs. We will focus on dignity. Those are our core areas that we are focusing on, and it is taking budget, and it is difficult when you have to put these budgets aside, but nobody said that governing was easy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier. Honourable Moran, last follow-up.
Speaker, I've been locked out for a moment, so I'm not sure whether I've missed out on something. Speaker, yes, last follow-up, Speaker, and the Honourable Yellen basically have also responded in such a way that the City of Cape Town basically, if they don't want to respond to questions,
Honourable Moran, are you there? We've lost you. Honourable Moran, unfortunately, as we've said in the rules, that you do have to watch your own IT connection problem. I'll have to move on, Honourable Moran. I'm unfortunately not able to hear you. My apologies, as you will not be able to pose that question to the Premier. I'll second. No. All right. Thank you very much. Honourable Moran, we'll move over to the following question. I now recognise Honourable Botha.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Premier. Premier, how has the Safety Dashboard Board improved the response to crime from the Provincial Safety Services? Please.
Thank you very much to the Honourable Member for that question. I think, and it follows on very nicely from the question from the Honourable Moran. You know, they always say, if you can't measure, you can't manage. And I mean, that was one thing that I really learned, and I think we all learned during COVID-19, was how you could use data to help make decisions, to manage. And that really was, I think, a massive learning curve for us. I mean, we knew that in COVID-19, we could work out day by day where cases were GIS mapped. We knew which street had the most cases in it. We knew which nightclub was a spreader. I mean, we could really use that data. So I kept on saying, well, if we got that kind of data on an infection or on a vaccination, why can't we get the same data on a murder or a GBV case and so that's why there's this big focus on data, on developing dashboards as management tools. And I must say that in the safety plan environment, and specifically now moving to violence prevention, because, you know, the one thing, and the first part of this conversation and the last question was about how many boots on the ground. Boots on the ground and policing are an intervention. But more important than that is the causalities. How do we get you ahead of the game? How do we get that young boy who's going to become a gangster identified before they become a gangster? We know they're a risk taker. We know that if we give them certain other support, they'll end up becoming that risk taker in the economy and an entrepreneur in the future. How do we, and the Honourable Member was at one of our nerve centres yesterday with the Standing Committee having a look at how those dashboards are presented. Okay, there you were looking at other things like we could tell you when the broadband went down at a school and when it went back up again, how it was influenced by load shedding. But those are all dashboards and they're all management tools. For me, what really stands out is, for example, if you look at when we went public with the violence prevention dashboard, you could see that we know now through the health data coming out into the dashboard system, we know now that violence against women gender-based violence against women who are pregnant. We know that the common violence happens to women in the second trimester. We know now that it is generally perpetrated by partners and by men known to that woman, and we know that they are between the ages of 24 and 34. And then we GIS map it as well. So we know that it's in this suburb or in this street or in that community. And now that data then goes to Minister Allen. She says, okay, what are we going to do from a policing point of view? Minister Fernandes, what are we going to do from a support point of view, from social development? How do we move in? So that's about data. So that's what the dashboard is about. So we get the data, we analyze the data. Yesterday, the standing committee members saw what kind of rollout on those dashboards our broadband is having. And we could see yesterday on that dashboard that 25 million rands worth of data is what our citizens are using every month on the broadband free Wi-Fi hotspot. 25 million rand a month that infrastructure is actually giving to citizens every month. We also know what kind of data they're looking for. The thing that hit me yesterday was how many people are on YouTube. Now I've asked, I want more data. What is it on YouTube? Is it an educational program or is it a sport event that you're watching? What value are we getting out? What is that 25 million rand so-called buying? So just as important as that is, even more important are the violence prevention dashboards, the mechanisms for us to manage, to make decisions so that every single department gets that data and then says, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to affect change? How do the schools behave differently because we know that they are in the midst of an area that has massive gender-based violence? How do we engage with boys in those schools to make sure that in the future we start to build a safer, better society? And that's what the dashboard is all about. And it's part of the safety plan. It's how we are rolling it out. And we're not the experts on everything. We learn as we go, and we're getting better and better as we go. And as we go, we're building a safer and safer province. And hopefully, just as I had the Premier of the Northern Cape's whole Premier's office down here to visit a month ago, the same Premier has sent his team from health to come and see what we're doing so that they can also try and learn, because everything we do in this province is about the citizens of this province, but it's also about South Africa.
Thank you, Premier. Over to you, Member Witter.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thanks for the Premier's passion around the safety dashboard and the information that he gave us. I just want to know, latching this onto the devolution of SAPs, how would the devolution of SAPs work in to the province work, and what is there a timeline attached already to this devolution of SAPs? Premier.
Thank you very much for that follow-up question, and I think that's a perfect question. I mean, that's something that we campaigned for. You know, a timeline, it can actually happen today. The minister could devolve that power and management to this province today. Our existing constitution, Section 99, allows for that mandate to be shifted to province or even local government. So, and then Section 206, there's a whole lot of sections in our constitution that allows policy development, and that policy development at a national level could empower policing at a provincial level. So it could happen immediately. But of course, also Minister Becky Clearly has said to me, to my face, not over my dead body. I'm not sure exactly what he's all said to Minister Allen, but I know that there's been a little bit of kopbotsing there. But of course, we will push, because why? It is in the interests of safety of the citizens of this province. We will do whatever we can. But I want to say one thing to you for that question, Honourable Member. The timeline could be today. But of course, the other timeline is in about just under 2 years' time, when the ANC lose power in South Africa. And it's got to happen between now and then, but at the very latest, it's got to happen then after the next election. When the ANC loses power, we will make sure that we change things in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Final follow-up? No? I think you've done. Thank you very much. Honourable members, that we are out of time. That brings us to the end of questions to the Premier. We now move over to statements by members. And remember, your time is 2 minutes each. I now recognise the Democratic Alliance. Over to you, member.
Deputy Speaker, the generally negative economic impact of load shedding is known to us all, but many may not realize the severe impact these blackouts have on the agriculture sector. The face of agriculture, a field that for centuries was able to function without electricity, has completely changed over the last number of years. With only a few exceptions, commercial farms now require a reliable source of electricity, preferably at competitive prices. Farmers, therefore, pay high so-called transformer fees for the availability of electricity on their farms. Just a few examples of the role of electricity. Pumps require electricity for modern-day irrigation systems. High-quality wine production requires the ability to carefully control temperatures. Milk pasteurization and milking equipment requires electricity. The production of frozen vegetables and fruits require energy. Our hops farmers outside of George use sodium lights to artificially increase the daylight hours in order to compete with other world regions. Young livestock are raised under the heat of ultra-red lights. Electric lights in chicken coops stimulate hens' ovaries so that more eggs can be produced more cheaply. Load shedding is no longer just a slight inconvenience in our daily lives. It is now a legitimate threat to the functioning of our economy. It threatens South Africa's agriculture sector, and we stand to lose our advantage to compete on a global scale. What is worse, load shedding is pushing up prices, which in turn is leading to malnutrition, poverty, etc. Eventually, it's again the poor that suffers most under ANC incompetence. That is why we've welcomed the steps outlined by the President to address the energy crisis. They are straight out of the DA's playbook, but we've seen that script before. This time, we need real action from government. We trust that these measures will be implemented without delay in order to resuscitate the agriculture sector and our economy at last. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise the ANC.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, on the 9th of June this year, Tiger Brands announced that they have plans to close factories in Langeberg and Aston. Even though these plans were 2 years in making, the announcement shocked the food industry. Over the last 70 years, the factory have been able to provide employment and seasonal jobs for many. At the time of the announcement, nearly 2,500 farm workers and 300 farmers were at risk. 4,000 jobs were said to be affected. At the time of the announcement, Mr. Jaap Johannes, CEO of Canning Fruit Producers Association, indicated that, and I quote, "We need some people to take our hand and help invest in this business to prevent it from closure." I think the effect is a social economic disaster. It's not just a cold business decision, quote end. While there is no doubt that the Western Cape provincial government would want to claim this as the victory, the real heroes in saving the factories are the farmers, farm workers and factory workers. In these tough economic times, farmers have pledged not to increase their produce prices, whilst workers have stated that they will not ask for any wage increase. COSATU, often scoffed by this provincial government, showed leadership and ensured a partnership between the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, as well as other development finance institutions. Those roles should be played by the provincial government, facilitating social compacts with social partners, but once again, the provincial government came late to the party. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Is the EFF online? No. EFF, are you online? No. I'll then move over to the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, at a time in which the economy is under severe strain, government must lead the way in ensuring that every cent of public money is spent responsibly and wisely. Our citizens, already facing the burden of high cost of living, must be assured that their money, tax money, is being used for the public good. With that in mind, Deputy Speaker, I'm overjoyed to see that the Western Cape's municipalities have taken this message to heart. The Auditor General's Municipal Audit Outcomes Report for the 2020-21 financial year showed two things. Firstly, that South Africa's municipalities are in dire financial straits. And secondly, that the Western Cape is the only place in South Africa in which municipalities are holding fast against the slow rot of financial mismanagement. The Western Cape holds a little over 10% of all the municipalities in South Africa and yet accounts for more than half of the clean audits in the country. The AG's office attributed this success to the quality of the Western Cape's leadership and the competence and experience of its staff. Clearly, at a time in which as much is going wrong in the country, something is going right in the province. Of course, there's more work to be done. We must ensure that we achieve good governance and everywhere in the province, not just in most of it, particularly where the ANC and other opposition parties are governing. But as I'm confident, Honourable Deputy Speaker, that in a year's time I will stand up in this House and attest to the fact that 100% of our municipalities have achieved an unqualified audit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognize Good.
Deputy Speaker, the state of primary healthcare in the Western Cape is tremendously concerning. Considering the National Development Plan and the Western Cape Provincial Strategic Framework towards promoting health and wellness, improve the quality of health services and patient experience. And in embedding good governance, what is happening in communities does not reflect what is adopted in theory. The department have had some wins, we acknowledge those. However, accountability should be exercised where the need arises, and our communities need competent, functional health services. From Westvliet to Ceres to Grabouw, clinics and hospitals alike are experiencing the same challenges. Dilapidated infrastructure, shortage of staff, under-maintained ambulances, shortage of medicine, and the staffing of critical care units. Gross mismanagement of medical centers and security guards policing the access patients have to these facilities. To alleviate pressure from the Westvliet Hospital, this government should consider adopting the 2 primary healthcare clinics in Atlantis into the Provincial Department of Health to capacitate and staff the operation to ensure decent health services are delivered within the Atlantis community and surrounding areas. Speaker, I reiterate that we will compliment where good work has been done, but we cannot remain silent when communities are in harm's way when there are manageable interventions in existence to ensure that the Department of Health delivers the services in line with its objectives and the 2030 Provincial Health Plan. The framework exists. All this government needs to do is to cultivate the political will. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the ACDP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to make a plea to the Western Cape government to do something when it comes to the homeless. They form part of our daily lives and cannot wish them away. We cannot wave a magic wand and they will disappear. The reality of the homeless is here that they must, and we must deal with it. How they are dealt with is evidence of our empathy in every situation. The homeless take shelter and sleep under cardboards, plastic seating. Where do they relieve themselves? Where do they wash themselves? Where do they wash their clothing? Some of them, sadly, when I drive, I see some of them have little babies with them. And where do they go to school? I think all of them. Toddlers don't go to school. And it's painful to see at the robots, mothers sitting with little children in their hand and knowing that tonight they don't know what they're going to eat. The homeless are not always what they seem to be. Some of them were upstanding members of communities. But today we see them to stay alive, scratching in dirt bins, selling recycled plastic, and anything that will bring an income. Some of them were married. Some of them could not deal with the trauma in life. And that's why my plea to the Western Cape government to do something when it comes to the homeless. Sometimes I see how the homeless are harassed when it comes to law enforcement officers and how they are treated. I want to say the homeless, we can be homeless, but by the grace of God, it's not me and you. So my plea from the HCDP is that the Western Cape government do something. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member. I now recognize the ANC.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ANC in the Western Cape Legislature commends the National ANC for the commencement of the Makaza Police Station in Khayelitsha in November of this year. The building of this police station has been in the making for many years. The lack of a police station in Makaza created a lot of challenges for policing in Khayelitsha, where resources were sometimes overstretched as many officers had to be sent to the Makaza area. Before the announcement on the commencement of the building project, SAP's provincial leadership had already taken steps to redeploy resources away from the police stations in the leafy suburbs to crime hotspots in Makaza, Philippi, and surrounding areas. We commend the sterling work by the SAP's leadership in the province. In the midst of recent spikes, this House can bear witness to violent crimes, notably the mass shooting occurring nearly every weekend in our poor communities. The shortages of police resources, coupled with the provincial government's lack of prioritization of safety in poor working class communities, were laid bare. The building of this new police station will go a long way in addressing many policing challenges in Makaza and Khayelitsha at large. With Stats South Africa estimates on the population of the area to approximately 451,000 people, Khayelitsha boasts of only 3 police stations in the region, which would not be able to cater for the entire community's safety needs. Deputy Speaker, I would also like to applaud the national government for supplying Khayelitsha with additional police vans on Youth Day to mitigate the issue of police vans not responding timeously due to a shortage of vans, as well as the addition of 85 police officers that will be deployed. Unlike the DA-led City of Cape Town LEAP program, which has already appointed an individual with a questionable record, a word of advice: go and tell your colleagues in the city to vet its new recruits. You will lose because of these new systems and a compromise to the very same security. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Member. I now recognize the DA.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. On a positive note, I just want today to congratulate our champion sportswomen of Banyana. They have managed to do something that our men have not been able to achieve for 26 years, and that is to win the African Cup of Nations. I also want to send special congratulations to our players from the Western Cape, Sibulele Holweni, Amohelang Mutau, Bongega Gamede, and Rigel Ngobeni, who all play their club football at UWC. This victory does shine the spotlight on another pressing issues in our country, and that is equal pay for equal work. And yet, when it comes to pay for national team performance, which is of course paid by national government, the men earn much more than women. How is it that right? The men earned 520,000 for only reaching the last 8 of AFCON in 2019, but the women only earned 400,000 rand for winning the whole thing. Is that the message this national government wants to send to our young women? That if a woman does the same thing as a man, only better, she will get less of a reward. That is no way to inspire the generation of girls. We call on equal pay between Banyana Banyana and Bafana Bafana. Let the fair play concept in sports also include equal pay to all, irrespective of their gender. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Freedom Front Plus wish to place on record our most serious concern over the frequent reports by whistleblowers of misbehavior, dishonesty, allegations of sexual misconduct, fruitless and wasteful expenditure by senior members of the ruling party in this House, which in fact includes that of 2 ministers, as well as the Speaker and Deputy Speaker. While some of these matters are still the subject of internal and external investigations, the image of this august institution, we must admit, has been tarnished in spite of the steps taken by the Premier and his cabinet to address any malpractices. I therefore call for full disclosure of the relevant facts relating to all unresolved matters to this House, and that a public apology by the Premier should be considered on behalf of this Parliament to allay fears of any further similar disclosures in the near future by anyone in this House. Promoting persons to positions has again been seen to positions of authority and seniority should be considered in future with greater caution to prevent recurrences in an attempt to restore the dignity of this House.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognise Al Jamal.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, it is very disturbing that the Western Cape Provincial Government boasts it's all set and ready to take over the Western Cape South African Police Service, whom it describes as incompetent to deal with crime. The DA-led provincial government further stated that its LEAP officers are proof that there are sustainable ways in winning the war against crime. How selfish of this provincial government. If this government has sustainable ways to solve crime in the province, then why does it not implement the sustainable ways to eradicate crime instead of playing politics with it? The DA government must act against the root causes attributing to crime and not just treat it with a plaster. It is a known fact that Sabines are breeding grounds for criminal activities. Close the Sabines. It argues for more boots on the ground, but the province is selective in how and where it deploys more boots on the ground. It is clear as daylight that more policing is needed on the Cape Flats and in townships. The tavern attacks are not a new phenomenon. Between 2019 and 2021, there were 30 reported mass murders in the province, which claimed the lives of 117 people, including 11 children. The National Ministry of Police was given 22 million rand to deal with gangsterism, and 10 million of that 22 million rand was given to the provincial government, the Western Cape government. The province also received extra resources and budget compared to other provinces in the country. For as long as there is no real action taken against Sabines and liquor outlets who are conduits for crime and violence, there will always be a need for more boots on the ground. The provincial government says it has the mechanisms to fight against deadly attacks, but deadly attacks are taking place every day as the provincial government fails to use the resources and mechanisms at its disposal. These resources come from national government to protect the people in your province. So use it for that purpose and not for political gains.
Thank you.
Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the DA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, earlier this year, we spoke about the need for us to focus on combating TB in our province as we find ourselves in a period of post-pandemic recovery. Within the first half of this year, there have been almost 23,000 individuals who have contracted tuberculosis, in which just under a tenth of those have resulted in death. It is for this reason why the provincial government has pioneered in instituting various initiatives, such as the multi-sectoral provincial TB emergency response plan and the provincial TB dashboard. These are examples of a proactive government that innovates service delivery. Deputy Speaker, now is the time for us as a legislature to contribute to these efforts. As the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, we are poised to establish a TB caucus in the Western Cape as an ad hoc committee by the end of August. This comes after a research document on guidelines was sent to the committee, which follows a number of engagements since February 2021 with a multitude of stakeholders in government, civil society, and within Parliament. Honourable Deputy Speaker, a multi-sectoral approach is thus required to help fight this disease as whole so that our communities can be further protected. Honourable Deputy Speaker, health is everybody's business, and we can clearly see that these plans are proof of a province that ensures the well-being and dignity of residents. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. That brings us to the end of statements. In terms of Rule 145.6, I now give one or more members of the Executive an opportunity to respond to any member statements for not more than 5 minutes collectively. Are there any ministers who would like to respond? No. Thank you very much. That is the end of members' statements. I'll now move over to notices of motion. In terms of the new Rule 151, all notices of motion by members are required to be delivered to the Secretary for placing it on the order paper. These motions have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. We now move to motions without notice. I would like to inform you that in terms of the Standing Rule 150 pertaining to motions without notice, that condolence and congratulatory were submitted to the Programming Authority prior to this plenary on the 26th of July 2022. Members are reminded that motions without notice pertaining to congratulatory and condolences will not be allowed in the sitting that have been processed by the Programming Authority. I've been informed that in the Programming Authority meeting of the 26th of July 2022, political parties did submit the names of honourable members in the desired order of speaking and who had wished to move a motion without notice in this sitting of the House. I will therefore, just for noting and for the purpose of the minutes, call out the honourable members whose names have accordingly been submitted and approved. The following member motions have been approved by the Programming Authority as follows. Honourable Christians, Honourable Lacka, Honourable Botha, Honourable Sayed, Honourable Bosman, Honourable Sayed, Honourable Mumbi, Honourable Barnes, Honourable Windvogel, Honourable Barnes, Honourable Dugmore, Honourable Bosman, Honourable Bosman, Honourable Bosman, Honourable Mackenzie, and Honourable Botha. I now put the motions duly submitted and approved by the Programming Authority to the House. Are there any objections? No objections? Agreed to. The motions will appear in the minutes of the proceedings and in Hansard in each individual member's name, as if that member had read them out aloud. Honourable members, I will now forward the opportunity to members to move motions without notice as per the Standing Rule 152D. This could include motions without notice that were not approved in the Programming Authority meeting. Members are reminded that 30 minutes as per the Standing Rule will start now. As per my list, I recognise the Honourable Bartman.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that this House commends the Western Cape Education Department for its Back on Track recovery plan, which seeks to tackle the learning losses experienced in the foundation phase. By allocating an additional 2 hours of group-guided reading and 1 hour of mathematics every week, it is expected that every foundation phase learner will gain an extra 60 hours of learning over the course of the 3rd and 4th term. We look forward to this program's success. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognise Honourable Clergo. I don't think he's here. No, he's not here. That's two. I now recognise Honourable Kamba Botia. Also not here. No. I now recognise Honourable Barnes.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes with pride the victory of South African soccer women's team, Banyana Banyana, who have been crowned the Women's African Cup of Nations champions following the victory in Morocco last week. Notes further that the 4 Banyana Banyana stars made it into Women's AFCON Best 11, namely goalkeeper of the tournament and co-captain Andile Dlamini, defender Bamanani Mbane, co-captain Refilwe Jane, and striker Jermaine Siopenswe. Congratulates Banyana Banyana for winning the tournament and the 4 players who made the best 11, and reiterates call for equality in sports, which should include equal pay between Bafana Bafana and Banyana Banyana. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I now recognise Honourable Maran. No. I will move on to recognise Honourable Karma. No. Moving on to recognise Honourable Baku Force. I don't see Honourable Baku Force. Honourable members. Honourable members, order. All right, that concludes motions without notice. Thank you very much, members. If we can move over to orders of the day. Order. Right. The table staff are going to read the first order of the day, please. Thank you very much.
First order of the day, consideration of the report of the Conduct Committee on the failure of Honourable Member S.N. August to submit disclosure forms timeously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've been informed by the Chief Whip that the Programming Authority resolved that there would be no list of speakers and that parties who wish to do so will now be afforded an opportunity to make a declaration of the vote for a maximum of 3 minutes. I will now afford those parties an opportunity. I recognise the ANC.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ANC notes the report presented to this House today. The ANC believes in accountability and integrity. Even more so, we expect our public representative to be exemplary, and if they have transgressed in any manner, they must be held accountable. While we wish not to rub salt in wounds, this report must be a reminder to all of us of the high calling we have as representatives of the people of this province. We pause again today to be reminded that our responsibility is not for ourselves or our families and friends, but the poorest of the poor of the Western Cape. We sit in this house mandated by our people, as vulnerable as they may be because of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. We serve at the behest of our people, and our example of being punctual and beyond reproach must be emphatic. Yet, our people must also be aware that mud is often thrown at opponents because that is the nature of politics. Our people must be aware that at times factional battles bring into question the integrity of those who walk these hallowed walls. Our people must know that those who pursue political agendas often do so by applying double standard. Sadly, double standards are often based on race, class, and gender, is often also part of the nature of politics. The ANC will not be used in DA factional fights, as the proverbial saying goes, what applies to the goose must apply to the gander. We hope that, like the ANC, the DA will rise to the occasion and act with integrity and hold its public representative accountable without fear or favor. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I don't think the EFF are in line. I now recognise Good. No. Thank you. I'll move on to the ACDP.
Deputy Speaker, I'm not going to make a declaration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Freedom Front Plus. No, I don't see Honourable Marie's here. Al Jamal.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. No declaration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognise the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. At a meeting of the committee held on the 12th of May this year, the Registrar of Members' Interest, Advocate Burgess, presented a report on members' submission of disclosure forms for the year 2022. All the members, except for member S in August, returned their disclosure forms timeously as required by the Code. Member S in August was sworn in as a member of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament on the 8th of February 2022. The registrar informed the member by email on the 14th of February 2022 that he was required to submit a member's disclosure form by no later than 60 days after taking office. The password to open the documentation was also provided to him on the 14th of February 2022. A reminder was sent to the member on the 4th of March 2022 that the form had to be submitted by the 8th of April 2022. A final reminder was sent on the 7th of April 2022, reminding member August that the deadline for the submission was the close of business on the 8th of April 2022. Honourable Deputy Speaker, on the 8th of April 2022, a request for the password was received from the member's office. The password was provided by the registrar for a second time. On the 8th of April at 15:25, an email was received from Pumla Mtati on behalf of member August, apologizing for not submitting the form, stating that it would be sent on Monday, the 11th of April 2022. The registrar then sent an email to member August on Saturday, the 9th of April, informing him that he was now de facto in the breach of the Code. The due date for the submission of the disclosure form by member August was the 8th of April 2022. The disclosure form was finally received on the 21st of April this year. The committee afforded member August the opportunity to provide reasons for the late submission and in mitigation of the penalty to be recommended by the committee. The committee met again on the 1st of June 2022 and the response received from member August was considered. Member August explained that as a former member of the National Parliament who has now migrated to the WCPP, he was inundated with several engagements, both in handing over his office in the NA and in taking up office at the WCPP. In addition, his staff reported that the document was faulty and problematic and that it was not possible to edit it online. All these factors put together resulted in him being unable to submit the document on time. He stated that he was under the impression that having submitted similar declarations when he started in the legislature, his latest declarations to the registrar had been made. He was therefore under the impression that no further declaration of interest would be needed. The committee noted the reason provided by Member August and after deliberations resolved to recommend that Member August receive a reprimand in terms of paragraph 32(1) of the Code of Conduct for members of the Provincial Parliament. Deputy Speaker, I therefore encourage this House to accept the recommendation by the committee. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I have to announce that there are currently 38 Honourable Members present and entitled to vote, and the House is therefore quorate. The question put before the House is that the report of the Conduct Committee be adopted. Are there any objections to the report being adopted? No objections? Agreed to. I'm not going to do ayes and nays. It's been no problem. We now will ask the table staff to read the second order of the day.
Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Developmental Planning on the withdrawal of the declaration of the Drift Sands Nature Reserve in terms of Section 24(1)(b) of the National Environmental Management Act.
Thank you very much. I have been informed by the Chief Whip that the Programming Authority resolved that there will be no list of speakers and that parties who wish to do so will now be afforded an opportunity to make a declaration of the vote for a maximum of 3 minutes. I will now afford those parties the opportunity. I recognize the ANC.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the ANC cannot support this declaration today. Whilst we are aware of the tight legal corner that the National Minister finds herself in, the ANC at this provincial level has consistently warned about the lack of proactiveness by this provincial government and the department in particular with regards to the disastrous situation in the Drift Sands Nature Reserve. This withdrawal of the status of Drift Sands as a nature reserve is simply too convenient. This provincial government, in particular the failing Minister of Infrastructure, must take responsibility for the failure to build houses for our people. The provincial government, in particular the Department of Local Government, must take responsibility for the lack of oversight given to the City of Cape Town in holding the city to account for lack of basic service delivery. In the budget vote earlier this year and in interpellation sponsored by the ANC, we warned that this department was simply taking the easy way out. If this department cared about the environment, it would have found houses for our people, occupying the nature reserve and relocated them. But because this provincial department and this provincial government is a failure, they did not heed our warnings, and even worse still, it is because they do not care about our people and even less about the environment. The people of the Western Cape, the withdrawal of the status of the Drift Sands Nature Reserve must spell another reason why this province urgently needs an environmental commissioner. The province cares little about our people, the living conditions and the environment. This is the legacy that this MEC leaves behind, a legacy where one of the nature reserves in our province is deproclaimed. It is this failure by him and the provincial government, and he must understand it as such. The ANC will continue to call on the establishment of an environmental commissioner as compelled by our provincial constitution. If you want to be called a minister, then you must want to establish an environmental commissioner. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I note the EFF not on. Good. No.
No
The ACDP.
declaration, Speaker.
Am I correct that good was not on?
I said no declaration, Speaker.
No declaration. Thank you very much. ACDP?
Deputy Speaker, no declaration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Freedom Front Plus, I don't see here in the House. Al-Jamal?
No declaration, Deputy Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I recognize the DA.
That the Honourable Maran is not supporting the deproclamation of the Drift Sands Nature Reserve, while we actually have in writing that his National Minister, Minister Creasy, is in support of this. It is so difficult in a country when the official opposition is so divided. Honourable Speaker, before we consider the report on the possible withdrawal of the Drift Sands Nature Reserve status, it is critical that this House understands the challenges of rapid urbanisation in the Western Cape. Furthermore, the House should recognise that the Western Cape Government, through its nature conservation entity, Cape Nature, did everything in its power to preserve the ecological dignity of the Drift Sands Nature Reserve. Our law enforcement entities, such as SAPS, unfortunately failed us. There's been a notable increase in the number of people moving to Cape Town from rural and other regions of the country. This is because Cape Town and the Western Cape provide prospects for dream realization, a new lease on life, and a government that works to ensure that the private sector prospers in order for job creation to flourish. This migration and the lack of money from the National Fiscus for our provincial human settlements initiatives have contributed greatly to 11,400 people unlawfully setting up their dwellings on the nature reserve. The tempo of this has escalated dramatically since the COVID-19 regulations promulgated by the same national government, which put a high strain on law enforcement and severely limited the options of landowners to protect their land against illegal land invasions. Land invasions, like in this case, where people go so far as to put themselves and their families at a serious risk of floods and flooding. The Standing Committee on Environmental Affairs was briefed by Cape Nature on the 23rd of June this year, and scientific arguments were presented which showed that the integrity of the biodiversity was severely compromised. The environmental degradation is so bad it was deemed to be irreversible. The motivation to preserve this land as a conservation site has therefore vanished. The Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning's report therefore recommend to the House that the declaration of Drift Sands as a provincial nature reserve will have to be withdrawn. Honourable Speaker, it is unfortunate that this debate has to happen on World Nature Conservation Day, a day where we should be celebrating the conservation of ecosystems found in our province's reserves. Fortunately, this province is still blessed with large and wonderful nature reserves. And to put it into perspective, drift sands form less than 0.05% of our provincial conservation areas, excluding the reserves managed by sandparks. I therefore recommend that the House adds its support to the report, recommending that the Drift Sand Nature Reserves proclamation be withdrawn. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I have to announce that there are currently 37 honourable members present and entitled to vote, and the House is therefore for it. The question put before the House is that the report of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning be adopted. Are there any objections to the report being adopted? Your objection will be noted
Yes.
to the members of the ANC. Thank you. The report is as adopted. Thank you. Members, that concludes the business for the day. The Secretary will now end the meeting and all the members will exit the meeting. The House is adjourned.